from looking at data, and I'm recording this again, and we have just been talking about four-year graduation rate. The state met our targeted performance level. This is data that's less within our control, and since we're meeting the data at this point in time, I'm encouraging centers not to spend a lot of time and energy worrying about this data measure at this point in time. We can revisit it later as needed. Extended graduation rate, we're doing well as well. We're at about 94.8% of our students are graduating within 6 years. So we had not set a baseline for our federal accountability because we had never collected that before and it was new. But I think that we're certainly doing well in our extended graduation rate. And it does help us look at that extended graduation rate to see how the students who didn't graduate in 4 years, if they're being successful in that extended graduation time. So again, this is an area where we'll focus more in the future. Right now, Washington says we're in good shape. We're not going to wait. We're going to not focus our energy there at this point in time. We may come back to it in the future, but for now we're in good shape.
Hey,
Gwen, it
Ruth.
looks like your hand's raised.
Yeah, this might be a silly question. Maybe everybody else understands why we're doing this. Are we comparing our data to the state data in section 3?
You will get your own data, and I think it's very helpful to have a sense of where the state data is because yes, you are that's exactly, Gwen. Okay. It's going to be like, how are you doing compared to how the state's doing?
Okay, thanks.
And you get full credit for the area where your centers carry on the state data to great places, right? Because there's some centers that are really strong in certain areas, but this also helps you know. Many times people ask me, how do we compare to other centers? This gives you, when you get your center specific data, you'll be able to compare how your center is doing in each area to the state's overall data.
Ruth, my tab for the extended S12 extended year is blank.
Oh, well, I'll fix that, Dana, and resend it. Okay. I did this cut rather late last night, and it could be that there was a delay in getting it out of the system that downloads it, and that I may have uploaded it into an email before it was done downloading.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just thought I had done something to erase.
No, that would probably be the fact that I should not be allowed to work after a certain point in the evening.
I'm right there with you, Ruth. I'm right there with you.
I do great up until about 5 o'clock, and then it's a little less. Okay, so resend extended graduation with numbers. So Dana, it should have numbers because I printed it out from, I'll figure it out and I'll resend it to you. Don't worry. I'll figure out what went wrong.
Okay.
Or Doug and I.
Yeah, I don't know.
Doug and I will figure out. So who took a look at WorkKeys reading scores?
I did, Ruth.
Yep, I did as well.
Okay, Melissa and Dana, what did you see?
I was very happy to see that by program, we exceeded the state for all programs. So that was nice by all clusters. There were a couple of youth and foster care. That's an area that we have a no, and also English language learners and single parents. But other than that, we exceeded. So the piece here that's problematic is that we exceeded 2% because we hadn't set a number. So what I want to share with you is, yeah, we're doing fine because we aren't in trouble yet, but in 2 years we're going to have as our baseline that 30. So moving forward, we'll be asked based on our 36.58 baseline. Sorry, I wrote over it and I can't tell because I need my reading glasses to be able to see it. 36.58% is where we are statewide. That will be our baseline moving forward. We'll have to negotiate for improvement from there. So that's where for you, as you look at your center-wide data, we're 36.58% of your students at a level 5 or higher. If so, you're right where the state is. If you're finding that your center's lower than that, you'll be wanting to think about how you help get to that measure as a starting point and move forward. And while it's good that we have this data, it's concerning to me that only 36.58% of our students scored that at a proficient level on that assessment. So that shows that statewide, we have work to do overall in helping our students with their reading and English language arts skills. And if we look by certain program clusters in that area,
then I'm more concerned as well. Like when I look to, for example, yes, when we look at the percentage of students, for example, who are economically disadvantaged, we see fewer of them are scoring as well. When we look by certain program areas, we see that we have strengths in some areas and we have more work to do in others. So that data, this is just baseline for the year. We'll see what this year's data looks like. We'll negotiate with Washington for how we're going to take our baseline and improve moving forward. But you'll want to compare your students' performance to the statewide data to get a sense of how your center's contributing to that overall picture.
My notice, Ruth, was
Yep.
that students with disabilities were performing 15% percentage points below the general average.
Yeah.
In terms of the overall performance level. And I think that that's a significant, statistically significant gap.
That's significantly significant, and it's 23.57% for economically disadvantaged. So that's another
Right.
significant gap, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So
But I
we
mean, yeah,
certainly
looking
need to
at
think about those moving forward, right?
right.
And in Ruth, when we're looking program by program, so are we comparing the statewide program average or the state total average? Does that make sense?
So Melissa, we're going to give you, you're going to get from us, and I tried to check with Rob to make sure I wasn't promising the wrong thing, but he took today off. Good for him. But I will have for sure, but what you will get is your center's data overall and by program area. So I encourage you to compare both, right? Because one of the things, for example, that I might have heard from a group of teachers this week that I met with was that none of their colleagues' students were doing any better than their students on certain things. This gives you that chance to have that conversation if that's not accurate. Or if your teacher is really struggling and but the cluster overall is strong, maybe they have colleagues that can be helpful to them in saying what they're doing to help close that gap.
Along the same lines, Ruth, by comparing the center's program data to the state's program data, you're going to know whether you're on target, at or below or above, and that can open up the conversation about resources, whether you are going to be a resource to others or whether you need to reach out to others in the cluster to get assistance, because the average is the average. That's the state average, and we can compare ourselves to the average without having to compare ourselves specifically like PHCC with Stafford or
Right.
Randolph or something like that. We can compare ourselves to the average and decide what we need to do to improve.
And I think the other thing that goes with that is some of your centers have made significant investments in your math integrationists or your reading integrationists, and the data will help justify continuing those positions. The data will help if you don't have those and you had Perkins funds you wanted to allocate to those, to building in those positions. This data can help you in a variety of ways. And I think what you'll also see in some centers that I know of that have certain key support positions is, while overall we have that gap, either for students with disabilities or students from economically disadvantaged families, some centers have closed that gap more than others. We're going to want to look at that data to learn what's working well, to advocate for replicating that and the resources to replicate that moving forward. Okay, anything else about reading before we move on to math? Who looked at math?
I did. This is Leanne.
Hi, Leanne.
Hi. I noticed that we exceeded in all categories, but 2 sections of the special populations were not met.
Yeah. And then what else did you see? Anybody else look at this one?
I did.
Nancy, what did you find?
So I looked at the cluster data in comparison to the state data. And the thing that I noticed was that we have we have some clusters that are significantly above the average. We have a number of clusters that are significantly below the average. So for instance, education and training is at 36.36.
Yeah.
And the state and the average is 46. So really, we need to be looking at how are we going to address math skills in some of our areas that may not focus on as much as in-depthly on math as some other areas. But how are we going to build our student skills to meet that average?
And that's exactly what Perkins is asking us, right? Because, you know, right now we're doing really well in math in ways because things like 86.36% of our students in STEM have strong math skills, which is good. We want them to. But it does then make the fact that there are students who struggle in other programs less clear. And
Right.
it also does, I think, show the return on investment that we have in some of those programs, because programs where we would hope to see high math scores, we often do, which is an area then where you can compare that to your center to make sure that you're seeing that same trend. One of the
Right.
things I noticed in this one was that we're at 46.02% overall. 50% of our male students were proficient, while only 38.82% of our female students were.
Mhm.
That probably also goes into some of those cluster categories too, right? If we have programs that are traditionally female where students, all scores are low there too, but it gives us a bigger picture, right? To say, okay, what does our data tell us and why?
Right. And I look at programs that might traditionally be considered to veer toward the female gender, like education and training is at 36.36%, and human services is at 33.97%. So the need to be rigorous in those programs around intervention are going to be huge.
Exactly. And the other part is those programs, students tend to go on to post-secondary education.
Right.
And they're going to need to not have to, they're going to need math skills to be accepted into those programs and to not have to pay for remedial courses while they're there. So it's a bigger part of that. If we're preparing them, even though the math may not be inherent in the program for their post-secondary success, the math is important.
So that brings up another question, Ruth. I'm going to make an observation since I looked at the data for both these last two academic areas, and it's important to look at more than the percentages, the numerators and denominators, so that we know what the N is that we're dealing with. Because if you're dealing with a small number, that small number, like Asian and Pacific Islanders, 100%, 2 people. One of the education and training, you only had 11 total, and you had 4 that met the standard. So we need to be careful. What is more telling, I think,
Exactly.
is that if you lump human services and education and training, which are often an affiliated program, then you're looking at basically the same cohort. And I have the same observation that Nancy had, that's an area where we need to beef that up. But I know that our center uses that, what we human services gets a social studies credit, and that's not evaluated anywhere, and math is less emphasized in that program. So we may be attracting candidates who may struggle with math to begin with, and so we need to figure out how we're going to bolster their computational skills in
Exactly. And the other part that goes with all of this is last year's data, and we didn't test we had a pandemic. You weren't required to test this high a percentage of students. Some students didn't get tested. We don't know. This is our starting point. It would be interesting, I think, if I were in your shoes, and we'll certainly do it at the state level after you report your data, you know, at the end of this year, to see if when we test a larger group of students this year, if the data looks the same or if it looks different, right? We don't know the answer to that yet, because when I look at certain things too, like education and training, only 11 students took the assessment. We, you know, and human services, we had 156. I don't know how that reflects the overall student population in those two related categories, but it may be that in some areas we had more students represented in testing than in others. If we change that, will the data look different? We won't know for another year, but this gives you a starting point to compare. Who looked at science? Science, only 23.97% of our students who took the assessment were proficient. We didn't have, as you know, we had 968 students who took the assessment. I think what I have done based on this data is reach out to the person who wrote the Vermont Science Assessment, and I reached out to the person who has the statewide data on the number of students overall who are proficient, and asked them to provide me with more information so we compare our students with statewide data in other sources, and they have not yet. They've all said they're working on it and will get it to me, but I'll share that as I have it, because this is brand new for us, and the assessment in Vermont is new as well. They switched to a new assessment, and we haven't been accountable for it before. So this is an area where we need to learn more. And I've asked the science specialist at the agency to be prepared to meet with me and then to help think about how we help you. So it's an area that's interesting. Of concern to me is certain programs with a strong science component where students didn't do particularly well on the assessment. I think those are areas we'll want to look at moving forward.
And Ruth, we don't actually administer that assessment.
No, you don't. But what I've been told by the science specialist, and I need to learn more, is that only about a third of the content on the science assessment is content knowledge. A lot of it is scientific theory, and a lot of it is problem solving.
Mhm.
So while we don't teach the content for our teachers, we can help them learn how to build in, you know, the parts that help with the problem solving part of it, or the parts that help with the scientific method part of it. There may be specific strategies we can implement. This again is going to be a multi-year initiative. It's going to be a focus of some statewide work. It's good to have a starting point so we can build on what we learn and bring in resources to help us.
That's a good
I would
point.
not say you want to target local resources for this right now. You want to just be aware and know that that's going to need to be a statewide priority.
One of the things that we found with the worksheets assessments is that the students respond better and take it more seriously when they work with us, as opposed to an assessment that they're doing in a larger group with other students at their home or partner school. So I'm not suggesting that the data are not consistent. I'm just saying that we have found that our students, in terms of individuals, are more responsive when they're working with us.
And because this is a new assessment, we don't have data to compare to how students did pre-pandemic to during pandemic, because it really only rolled out as a pilot, I believe, in 2019 and wasn't fully administered until after that. So we don't have good comparison to see how our students were doing before we had a pandemic to how they were doing on the same assessment before this. So we have a lot of work as a state to do in science. We have a science specialist who's very willing to help us figure out the implications for CTE. This is a statewide priority over 2 to 4 years. It's okay to know the data and not feel that it matters as much in how you're writing your applications. Non-traditional program concentration, who looked at this one? This is an area where we are in bad shape in Vermont. I had to write a lengthy improvement plan for us. We're going to have to target statewide resources, and many centers we're going to have to target resources because we're at 10.68%. We said we'd be at 11.94%. We were at 11.71% as our baseline going into Perkins 5, and we've gone down. And what's really concerning to me is that only 1.36% of our students who are in programs that are non-traditional for their gender are male. So it basically means we almost have no male students statewide in our programs that have been traditionally female, which includes health sciences, includes human services, and education and training. So there's work we need to think about how we do statewide and center specific work as well. And our participation of female students is higher. And that looks good until we look at the program level, cluster level data. And then when we look at certain program areas, we see where young women are very underrepresented. So this is an area where the state is going to issue a statewide request for proposals for a contractor to do some statewide work with us, but where your center will also want to be thinking, if your center is not doing well in this area, your center is going to have to specifically addressed in your plan moving forward. So we can talk more about that, but this is an area as a state overall where We do well in many areas. This has not been our area of strength, and we need to figure out how we do better. Anything else about that? Post-secondary credentials. Did anybody look at attain post-secondary credentials? Scott Farr. What did you find?
The mute button's in different places on different of these apps. So it's hard to, as a state, we're doing okay, but when you drill down to some of the cluster areas or the subpopulations, there's areas where we need to improve. One of my thoughts on this particular area is the types of post-secondary credentials and the unevenness of what it takes to obtain. Some are easier, some are harder, some are, you gotta do a test, a hands-on test along with a written test. So there's some unevenness there. So probably when it comes down, this may be an area where really you gotta look at your center and what's going on your center. And then other places there are programs, I mean, there are clusters where there may not be appropriate credential here too. So that's a real individual analysis thing, I would think, on a center level. And tell me if I'm wrong.
You're right. And what I'm going to say is, to compare with that, I don't think you can look at credentials without also looking at attained post-secondary credits, because that's where your center is going to want to look and say, okay, if I have an area where students aren't earning a lot of post-secondary credentials, are they earning post-secondary credits? Because if they're not earning either, that's where we're going to ask you to improve. If they're not earning one, but they're earning the other, that in the long run does well. What I have to do is talk to Washington about how we get credit for that better than we are in our current data. Because I didn't write the plan and nobody knew how to account for this well nationally when you're looking at multiple things, because there's not the same one level of success. No one's figured out the right mix yet. It's a national conversation because some programs earning those credits is really where you want to put your energy. Some earning the credentials is really where you want to, and some you want to mix. And how do we have two separate reports that reflect our quality, right? So that's a national conversation.
There have been times over, I've been around long enough to know that sometimes you were given credit from a college class on the IRC side because that was what was available. Yeah, that's a tricky, great, let's just merge it and have more numerator in the same denominator, but that isn't right either,
So this is an area where we're going to keep working, right? But the good thing is we're at a starting point where overall we're doing well. So you have a comparison to compare how your programs are doing, and do look at these. Look at the post-secondary credentials and the post-secondary credits as your whole picture of how your programs are doing. Don't look at them in isolation. And when it comes to post-secondary credits, anybody look at this one?
Can I just ask a quick question on the IRC one?
Yep.
So one of the things when I was looking at this last night and I saw that the arts AV technology was at 6.72%, that struck me because I'm seeing all my digital arts portfolios and my video communications portfolios. And when I met with those teachers this morning, they told me that the platform for uploading them has not been available. So yeah, they're doing the work, but there's no way for them to be submitted to be evaluated. So I'm wondering how that's fair to those programs.
It's not.
Okay.
It's not. And what happened, I've been trying to fix that. And I think what we should do is, for those of you who want to talk about this, we should set up a separate meeting because it's of concern to me. And there are two teachers who sort of were given the task for that cluster area to take the lead and wrote and said they declined to take the lead. So we have to figure out the right solution going forward.
Okay. I'd be happy to be part of that conversation.
Okay. Yeah, that was one of those things that jumped out at me as well, because I know there's great work and it's not reflected in our data. The good news about post-secondary credits is we were at a starting point where we were just under 20% when we started working on Perkins 5 planning. And last year, 36.3% of our concentrators who left high school left with college credits. So we did really well in that area. And I don't know yet for sure, but Natalie Searle has reached out to me to say that it's been a record year for dual enrollment for fast forward courses and tech centers, and the number of students participating and the number of courses offered. So I'm hopeful that we'll stay at that 36.3% or even increase from there going forward. And then it does also count. So Nancy didn't get numbers in the chart either. All right, I will resend those charts. Thanks, Nancy. No numbers in that chart for you. I will make sure I send something that has numbers.
Hey, Ruth.
Yeah.
Dana, the rest of the charts have no numbers. The rest of
Okay,
the
so
tabs.
that was a problem with what I did. I will find it. I suspect it was a timing end on my computer from getting it out of our shared document site to upload in a way that was populated.
Yeah, I hadn't looked, but when I moved over to the next one that you were looking at in terms of the post-secondary credentials, I saw nothing, and then I went to the rest of the
I'll
tabs
send you all those. I'll send the ones that you don't have numbers for with numbers. I promise.
Great, thanks,
And
Ruth.
the good thing is we're doing well with post-secondary credits earned. Again, look, when I send it to you and you're looking at your program level data, compare both credentials and credits because that gives you your full picture. And where you will get pushback from the Agency of Education because we're getting pushback from Washington and because it's also the right thing to do for students is if you have program areas where students aren't earning credits or aren't earning college credit and aren't earning post-secondary credentials, those programs automatically do not meet program quality. And you'll be asked to address that in your application. And the final one for work-based learning, when you get that data, you'll see that we went down. We were at a starting point of about 46.37%, and we went down to 22.61%. That's national. Every state says that at least half of their work-based learning's numbers, that they're at least at half of what they were pre-pandemic. So we're not going to worry about that right now because those are factors beyond our control. We'll start worrying about those as we continue to recover from the pandemic and as you have new data to report. Okay, I have a couple more slides and then we will be in a good place for the day. Just a sec. So as soon as we have your center level data, we will share it and we will have a chance for you to talk to us about questions you have or how we can be supportive of you. You will be required to write an improvement plan for any Perkins accountability measure where your institution did not meet 90% of what you negotiated for your performance for fiscal year 21. The fiscal year 21, the performance measures were emailed by Jay in May of 2020. If you don't have them, if you can't find them, you can let us know and we can resend them. And when you get the new data, we'll have what you negotiated. We will send that along again too, but if you want it before then and you can't find it, we can share it with you again. If you are required to write an improvement plan, you have to spend at least 30% of your FY23 and FY24 funds to make those improvements. My suggestion is you look at that, it's not per area, so it's overall, so you'll want to think about that, right? So you'll just want to think about how you're planning for if your center's got a need to improve in a certain area, how you're doing that. You're also going to want to think about things where you want to prevent having to spend money in the future. Those are the kinds of things where certain investments can really help you stay strong. And it's okay to say that you're spending money in ways that help you keep high student outcomes. Sometimes we cut something out of something and the data goes down. Be careful not to cut something out that's contributing to your success. And when we send you your data, we'll tell you which areas you don't meet your 90% threshold for. So you'll know that, and we'll provide technical assistance if you need help in thinking about what to do for it. April 15th is our, oh, sorry, Nancy.
Can I just ask a quick question? So our work-based learning numbers are going to be significantly below, and I have a plan for that, but in part, they're going to be significantly below because of COVID. Well, we still need to.
So here's the thing.
30%.
Here's the thing so here's the piece. If we are not meeting our performance measures for most of the performance indicators, an improvement plan is required. The exceptions to that are work-based learning, because we do not have to show improvement in that area for the way we've defined our program accountability to the federal government. It's not that it's not important. It's not that it doesn't matter. It means that for Washington's purposes, if we aren't where we want to be, that's a state problem, not a federal problem. For post-secondary credentials and credits, we have to target state resources and local resources if we aren't meeting them. But for work-based learning, we care about it as a state, but we don't report it to Washington in a way that makes them hold us accountable for our levels of improvement. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And the good thing for post-secondary credits, I think, is as we continue to expand opportunities, we have more models to draw from. So we have more opportunities available, and we continue to work toward more statewide agreement about that. So those are areas where we can provide statewide assistance to help your programs where there may not be good options currently identified. So that's a responsibility we share. And again, I think the only part of that that really comes into your planning is to make sure that if you don't have that post-secondary credential or that post-secondary credit in a given program, everyone in your center knows that can't be the norm moving forward, that something has to shift, and that everybody's involved in finding the right mix of what that looks like, so that 2 years from now, that is not the case. Oh, sorry, I moved too quickly. Our goal still is to have the applications available in GMS for release on April 15th. One challenge I'm working with is that we have not received the fiscal year 23 allocation in Washington. If you watch the news, things like budgeting are not always the priority in Congress. We will get guidance from the U.S. Department of Education by about April 1st, telling us when we're likely to know what the allocations are. If we don't know, what we'll do is we'll do what we did last year. We'll release it with a partial allocation. What I won't be able to probably do is give you as good an accurate evaluation of how much we'll actually have to spend. Last year, Washington had an estimate for us, and that estimate proved to be true. So far, we haven't received an estimate, which makes me a little nervous. But you'll have money to start with, and we'll give you more money as we know what it is. We just don't yet know what that right balance is. But we will do our best to allocate so that you have money to start the year available to you, and we'll amend. We'll have our technical assistance workshops on April 29th. The May 13th date is going to have to change, and I'm sorry for that. I learned of another obligation that I can't avoid on May 13th. So I will send out something else, and it may be a different day that week, or it may be that we build in 2 other options. So if you can't make one, you've got the other. We'll build in time. So I'll figure that out by Monday and send you an updated invitation, and I apologize for that. But and then the application deadline's May 20th. You can request an extension. Several of you already have. That's fine. We automatically grant your request for an extension. You then have until June 17th if you request the extension by May 20th. And that gives you, and then if you've completed your application by May 20th, you'll know from us that it's approved or returned for correction by June 30th and by July 15th if you have the extension until June 17th. And then one other thing I want to offer is, if you need it, we will consider request to extend the application deadline until June 30th, but we'll only do that if you can provide evidence that the additional time is needed to complete the application, not to complete the CLNA. So we can't give extra time if I don't think any of you have done this, but if somebody were here saying, oh, I'm going to start my comprehensive local needs assessment process in May, so I need extra time to finish it, that would not be okay. But if you need extra time to just pull the application together, we would consider that.
Ruth, can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
So likely, just so we can do everything properly with the RAB board, we're going to need the extension till May 6th. So I put that to you in writing.
Yes.
And so if there were parts that I wanted to start uploading into GMS for the CLNA, could I do that between April 1st and April 15th? I know the Perkins is available.
You can fill in GMS as it works for you. You just want to make sure you save. I don't know how the saving feature works on your end. Just make sure you save everything so you don't lose your work. But you can do that. You just don't submit it until it's complete.
Right. So if I wanted to
go in and see it on our end, even if you haven't submitted it.
Okay, so like the CLNA is open right now and we could start adding pieces if we felt like that part's complete.
The CLNA, the whole application will be released April 15th, and when you're ready, you can just fill in the parts that you're ready to.
Okay, well, this is going to sound stupid. So some people might be ready to do their CLNA by April 1st, but they can't put it in GMS until April 15th?
Yes.
Okay.
Because there's more to releasing an application in GMS.
Then what, those people that are ready earlier, are they just submitting it to you? And saying
No, they're
done?
writing it in their Word document. It's all written and they just copy it and paste it into GMS when it's ready.
Oh, okay. So I guess I don't have that Word document.
That's what Nancy said I sent on February 8th, and I'm going to resend this afternoon.
Okay.
Or on Monday, depending on how the day goes.
Now, do we have to do that Word document or can we just do it in pieces on GMS?
So my strong suggestion is that you do it in a Word document because GMS can time out on you. And even if you save it, if there was a technical difficulty, I wouldn't want you to lose your work.
Don't do it, Gwen.
Oh, no,
Do it in a Word document. Do it in a Word document.
I was gonna have it other places. I just didn't know if Ruth wanted it sent in both ways.
I want it only in GMS, and I
Yeah.
only will read it when you submit it, you know, in GMS. But if you're doing it, Dana's right. Make sure you have it so that
Yeah.
if you lose power, if GMS has a technical difficulty, if whatever else, you haven't spent 2 hours writing great stuff and you lose all your work.
Okay, absolutely. I'll totally do that.
Ruth knows my woes. I told her those at great length. So
I had those woes before I was in this job when I was sitting in 2 centers where I had things time out on me and there might have been swearing involved.
I'm sure. Okay, good one for the newbie. Thank you.
Yeah, that's our best advice to you. Don't rely on writing it directly in GMS and having it not disappear.
And Gwen, the other thing I learned as a newbie is that at the bottom of every page, there's a save button, but sometimes you have to scroll up to find it, even though it looks like you're at the bottom of the page. So, yeah, I lost a lot of work that way.
Okay, I think I've amended Perkins enough times. I kind of know where it is. So, thank you.
But look for the save page button on every page. It's a good thing because Doug and I had that problem just on our end with the save button on our end that wasn't always there. And then it lost what we wrote, but we didn't even have it as a choice. So we had to have that fixed. So if you find any problem with any of the technical pieces, that's where, let us know. But that's why don't rely on just writing it in GMS because until we have somebody work through it, if there's a glitch, what you see and what we see isn't always exactly the same. So we'll do our best to make sure it's ready for you. It cannot be released to you in GMS until we have finance put in the allocations. Finance can't put in the allocations until we have something from Washington that gives us what we need to know to put in the allocations. So as soon as Washington tells us, I'll do the calculation, send them to finance, they'll check my math and they'll put them in. But that's why even though the application is 90% built, we can't release it until we have that documentation from Washington. Just remember that anything you plan to spend Perkins funds for have to be supported by your CLNA data. And you can't use Perkins funds on a program that doesn't have the sufficient size, scope, and quality to be effective. You have to make local investments to bring those programs up to that measure at this point in time. So So you want to just think about how you balance what you build into your local funds versus what you build into your Perkins funds. And just remember that Perkins is allocated based on a formula, and the formula is based on things that are beyond your control, which include the population of students in your region and the percentage of students living in poverty in your region. And those numbers change. So what your allocation has been this year or over the past few years, it could look different. And that's beyond anybody's control. That's all a federal census data match. And I won't know until, which is a good reminder because they haven't sent me the federal census data match yet. So I should follow up on that. I suspect that means that Washington's behind on that as well. So I will make a note to find out where we are with the federal. All of this is to say it may be that if we don't have the census data yet or the allocation data, it may be that I have to write to you and say that we don't have it by April 1st. And if we don't have it by April 1st, I'll let you know if that does or doesn't change the April 15th deadline. But I will send the emails today to find out why we don't have it yet and what their latest projection on is when we will have it. And just these reminders that are things to keep in mind, we discussed at previous sessions, but I put them here as well so you don't have to figure out where they were. The things about what you can't do with marketing, what you can and can't do with outreach, what you can and can't do with staffing. It's all summarized for you again here, and it's in previous slides as well. So these things to keep in mind are not new. They've all been shared with you in the past. So we've all made it through the week. We will be here to help you when you get to writing your application. We will be here to help you if you have questions along the way. If you're doing the CLNA work as you move forward, everything else will be okay. If you want to check in about where you are, we're happy to do that. You can send us a note and we'll be glad to schedule a time to talk.
Thanks, Ruth.
Chris, do you have your hand raised?
I do. And now for the Canaan section of the meeting. We don't I just want to clarify, do we include improvement plans in our CLNA, or we just report? Or is the improvement plan from last time?
So Chris, what we're going to say to you is what we don't have is Canaan specific data, right? Because you've been a subgrant. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the data that Canaan sent to North Country, and you're going to send that to us directly, and we're going to develop a report for you. And then we'll discuss what, and then you won't have to write an improvement plan, but you will have to be a data informed plan to avoid an improvement plan next year. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how many years do you want?
Well, 2. Perkins tends to go in 2-year cycles. So let's look at 2 years of data.
Okay. I have not successfully logged into GMS as an individual. I've been a public person. How do I establish an account?
I will find Doug. Doug, put that in an email to Doug. He'll help you get an account.
Okay. And 4-year plan. We making that
4-year plan. I would say you're going to start with a 2-year plan.
Okay, but if I'm referring to a plan in my,
you will find that in the 4-year plan section of the new application, it says, what are your plans for the next 2 years?
Okay.
That's where people who wrote a 4-year plan could say nothing's changed, or based on all of this, we're throwing out our 4-year plan and we're writing a new 2-year plan. Or we're doing something in the middle.
Okay. I think that's all for now, but.
So Chris and I are detached this round?
As of next year, Chris is like his own grant.
Okay.
Thank you for all the years of support.
Yes, and thanks, Chris, for asking, because we had to have a couple meetings with Washington to figure out how to do that, but I think we now understand, and it hopefully will make life easier for everybody moving forward.
Sure. When do you want that information?
Within the next week.
Okay.
Other questions?
Ruth, not related to the to the presentation that you're doing, but I think, did you put something in the chat, meeting recording for the first part?
There was a meeting recording message that comes up whenever I'm recording. I don't put it in, but it comes up.
Well, no, it's actually the meeting. It says 1 hour and 5 minutes, but if you
It
click
shows
on
the, yes, so I recorded, then I stopped, then I started again, and it shows up in the chat.
okay, because I clicked on it and you have to sign in. So you'll send us the regular.
Yeah, it's there for our purposes. Then we have
Okay.
to caption it, and then it has to go out, and Nancy has to do all the captioning. I'm going to stop recording so you can ask anything you don't want to have recorded. We've covered the content of the meeting. I'll stop recording and we'll go from there.
Okay. No, I was just trying